NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bring your latest in the end of the year Brooklyn Nets news. All right, so let's dive right in and let's talk about Game 3 and Game 4 of the first round of the playoffs between the Nets and the Raptors. It was very predictable. It was very expected. In my last episode, I talked about how it really didn't seem like the Nets had much of a chance after losing Game 1 and Game 2, especially with Joe Harris being gone on personal leave, and it was just predictable. And Game 3, the Nets started off well. They looked sharp, but the Raptors were right there. The Raptors managed to extend the lead to double digits, but then the Nets just hung around, right? Like, the Nets were down by as much as, I believe, like 14-ish, 12, 14-ish around the third quarter, and they kept it there. Actually, it was more like the second quarter they were down that much, but they kept it right there around anywhere from 16 to 10, and they just kept it close. But at the end of the day, in the fourth quarter, the Raptors once again just executed better down the stretch. They had a lot more, firepower and talent than the Nets had, and the Nets just could not get closer than 10 in that game, and they ended up losing pretty much another blowout when it's all said and done, at least on the final score. And it's just that the Nets just did not have enough firepower, offensive ability, which we knew was going to be the case without Joe Harris. We already knew going into this series with everyone else gone and it just being really Jarrett Allen, Joe Harris, and Caris LeVert as the three main guys, that the Nets were already at a disadvantage. But losing Joe Harris, it was very evident of how much this team struggled offensively without Joe Harris in Game 3 and Game 4. And Game 3, like we said, they hung in there, but they just kind of got blown out at the end. And then Game 4, wow. Talk about just giving up. Caris LeVert was the only one who seemed like he came to play in Game 4. He tried his best to will his team on. He looked sharp. He was making plays. Tyler Johnson looked good as well. Tyler Johnson looked well in Game 3. Tyler Johnson looked good in the whole series, but Game 3 and 4 he looked well, but there was just no one else doing anything. Jarrett Allen didn't even take a field goal in Game 3, a field goal attempt in Game 3, and I don't fully understand why, because he's not terrible offensively, and when you have no offense, when you don't have Joe Harris, you need some people who aren't normally offensive players to step up. So I don't know why Jarrett Allen didn't take any actual field goal attempts in Game 3. Game 4, he took a couple, made a couple, but at the end, it just was just not enough. The whole Nets team really sucked except for Caris LeVert, and as I mentioned, Tyler Johnson looked sharp. And then in the third quarter, the Raptors just poured it on and ended the game, and the Nets ended up losing by a lot. The Raptors ended up scoring 100 bench points, which I believe is a playoff record, which is a little bit of a skewed stat because the Raptors were up by 30 in the third quarter. They basically played the bench the whole rest of the game from the third quarter on. There was nothing positive at all, I feel like, came from this series at all for the Nets, except for the fact that it gave a chance for players like LeVert and Tyler Johnson and Jarrett Allen to develop this experience and this confidence that's going to go into next year. Now, why did I mention Tyler Johnson and Luwawu-Cabarrot? Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot also had some good moments in this series. So those four guys, why did I mention those four guys? And here's the reason why. Those four guys, to me, are going to be key players into next year. And I'm not going to go into next year. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to talk about exactly who the Nets should keep or not keep yet. I think I'm going to do that on my next episode. It's going to be a fun episode next time, so that's going to be exciting. But those four guys, to me, it was really good seeing them play the way they played, because I really do believe those four guys, and the fifth, if you count Joe Harris in Game 1 and Game 2, as well as the whole bubble, those guys, I believe, have a chance and should be on the Nets next season. So that's the only real positive you can take away from what happened in this four-game series, is that the Nets played hard, even though they were only really in Game 2. if you look at it, Game 2 was the only game that really they had a chance to win, and we all know what happened with the turnover at the end of the game. So Game 2 was the only real close game. The rest of the series was pretty much a blowout. Once again, the depletion of the Nets team, the lack of talent that they had was evident. I mean, once again, when you're throwing guys out there like Jeremiah Martin and Lance Thomas and Dante Hall, when you're throwing guys out there and you're trying to count on Jana Musa to frickin' do something, but he can never do anything. So like you knew you were screwed going into it, and the Nets battled hard, battled, but just simply not even close to enough to get past the Raptors. So the Raptors swept them, and yeah, makes sense. But like I said, that's the biggest takeaway, though. I'm taking away from the bubble and the playoffs. The only real positive that I'm taking away, other than the hard, fighting grit that the Nets showed, was once again those guys getting key experiences and key opportunities to either prove themselves for next year or confidence. And when I say confidence, I'm looking at Jared Allen and Caris LeVert the most about the confidence, and really Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot as well. Those three guys are leaving this bubble with as high as you can possibly feel, getting swept, because they proved, all three of them, that they belong on this Nets team and that they are legit players. And I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I don't know. I always drop the pen. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Caris LeVert is going to get traded. I don't know if Jared Allen's going to get traded. I don't know if the Nets are going to decide to bring back Tyler Johnson. I don't know any of these things. I can speculate, and I would say what I would do, but we don't know. But the one thing that these guys did prove is that they deserve opportunities either with the Nets or somewhere else. Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, the Nets have an option, a player's option for him next year. I think they should, opt yes for it. But if they don't, I think he's going to get an opportunity somewhere else. Tyler Johnson, I think he's somebody the Nets should definitely consider bringing back as well. But if he doesn't, I think he proved himself that he deserves to be on a team somewhere, and he'll probably be on another team. Players like that, was the whole point of them signing with the Nets during the bubble or the restart, was because they wanted these opportunities, and we got to see them. Is Jared Allen, is he going to be the starter for the Nets? I don't know, but he's definitely should be a starter somewhere. Whether he's with the Nets or they end up trading him and they go with DeAndre Jordan, he's proved that he's a starting caliber center in this league. And like I said, Caris LeVert, whether he gets traded or not, he has proved that he is an all-star caliber player, borderline star. I wouldn't say he's a true star player, but he's an all-star caliber player, and he's a guy who can give you 20 to 25 points on any given night. He can be a playmaker. He can slash to the basket. He can shoot the three-point shot. He can make tough shots. He can steal the ball. He's a all-star, borderline star player in this league, and that was always the question, was he ever going to get there? I think he proved that he is there and that he should be considered one of the better players on the Nets next season, really the third best player on the Nets next season, behind Durant and Kyrie. It should then be LeVert. But once again, what will happen, I don't know. But that's my biggest takeaway from the playoffs. I have, nothing but respect for the Nets. The season as a whole, overall, I want to say it's a disappointment because, going into the season, I personally had higher expectations. Remember, I took the Nets to win over 44 and a half wins. Of course, we all know that they would never have been able to get there. But I think the way it played out, with all the injuries, with Kyrie Irving only playing 20 games and LeVert having another injury and before he came back, and Dinwiddie dealing with some issues, and then the whole, bubble restart and the Nets not having Dinwiddie, Taurean Prince, DeAndre Jordan, the main guys that basically they were there with, and then Joe Harris leaving. I actually have to say this is a relatively successful year for the Nets. I really do. If you would have talked to me about 3-4 months ago, right before the end of, right before the hiatus from the pandemic, I would have said this year was a disaster. But seeing how the Nets figured it out and how well they played under Jacques Vaughn and the restart and the effort that they played despite being very much so undermanned, I have to say this is a successful season for the Nets because it gave experience to the players that need the experience. And as we all know, it's all about next year. And next year has officially started today, which is August 25th. As now the Nets coaching search and all their offseason moves, the wheels are going to start in motion. There's been no announcement about if Jacque Vaughn's going to be the coach, or is he not going to be the coach. We all heard the speculation about, Popovich. If, there's rumors the Nets are going to go after Greg Popovich. Hey, listen, if you can get Popovich, by all means, get Greg Popovich. But, he is under contract with San Antonio, so they would need to get permission to interview him. He would have to agree, the Spurs would have to agree to let him go. There's a whole bunch of things that they would have to do. But, hey, why not? I mean, you go for it. What do you have to lose? Worst case scenario, you don't get him. But, Jacque Vaughn, there's rumors about Ty Lue. There's rumors about, Jason Kidd. No Jason Kidd. I'm sorry. No Jason Kidd. There's rumors about Mark Jackson. There's rumors about Jeff Van Gundy. There's a lot of rumors out there swirling about possible coaching candidates of who the Nets could go after. Look, I don't want to go into that right now of who I would rather have, but I mean, I always liked Mark Jackson. I've always liked the guy. I always felt that he is a tough coach, and I always kind of felt that he set the foundation for the dynasty that was the Golden State Warriors before Steve Kerr got there. I kind of like it. I don't have a problem with Ty Lue. But once again, I'm not going to go into big details about that. I'll save that for the next episode with the whole, should they stay or should they go and what moves the Nets should do over the offseason. So, like I said, I don't know. Still a lot of question marks. But overall, the season is over. Nets played well-ish. I mean, they played as good as they could under the circumstances. And, yeah, so there you have it. End of this episode. End of the Nets season. Let me know what you guys think, what you saw from Game 3 and Game 4, what you think is the biggest takeaway from the restart and the playoffs, and maybe some ideas that you have about the coaches. They're going to go after Popovich, they're going to go after whoever. There's been, I don't know. So it'll be exciting to see. So now keep your eyes open to the next NetsBoy episode because that's going to be the fun one. It's going to be relatively soon. I might wait like a week or so, but I'm going to do an episode of basically should they stay or should they go. And I'm literally going to go through the entire Nets player roster, both before the pandemic and after the pandemic. And I'm going to say whether or not the Nets should keep them or not. And that's going to be a lot of fun because I got a lot of opinions about certain players on this Nets team and whether or not I think they're any good or what's going to happen with them. So keep your eyes open for that episode. And until then, thank you very much, Net fans and Brooklyn Nets team, for doing what you can and battling hard. And until then, this is NetsBoy, signing off.